style here.
Nice, I like it. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get some product placement in there. Take a slug.
Oh,
Shoot real
yes,
quick.
yes.
Yeah.
Here we go. I messed. Hold on.
Uh-oh,
Here we
yeah.
go.
Don't fuck with the product, otherwise
Yeah,
you're not gonna
that's
get
not very
sponsored.
good placement. All right, hold on. Let me swig.
Yeah.
During my glory era,
Yeah.
I don't know if there was. We all had a glory era. Some of
Sure,
us
yeah.
might still have one en route. Some of us could still be living the glory era as I speak.
Mm.
But I would walk around work not with cans, but with 2 liters
2 liter
because it was
bottles.
more economical. 2-liter
Yeah.
bottles. So that became sort of a known thing, and I haven't done it for a while. But went to product placement at Walmart last night, and they had these for $1. And so I figured, well, you know, their stupid-ass 12-packs are too much money by comparison.
Right.
So
Right.
I'll pick up 4 of these and deal with it. So it's back to the old. It's back to the
Nice.
old realm. I think
That's
I
right.
tend to drink. Hard to believe, but I think I tend to drink more when I'm guzzling 2-liter things.
You know what? I do definitely, because I switched over to 2 liter bottles because it's much cheaper than 6 packs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have I keep my recycle. I keep like a bottle that I bought from somewhere, and then I just keep filling it up. But I will still drink I can knock back a full 2 liter bottle in less than a day, which is really fucking frightening, and
That's-
probably why I look the way I do.
Well, except incredibly, you and I are still alive.
Yes, well,
That's the part that completely fascinates me. I mean, given what I think is a pretty significant aspartame habit by both of us, I'm pretty fascinated that we're still managing to kick here and seem to still be able to get around. I'm sure that you know, one day we'll feel all right, and the next day we'll be dead. But you know, that's hopefully how this stuff works. But so far, yeah, it's reasonably okay. I was talking with someone who was bragging earlier today about how they've cut down on my pop, and he's saying, you know, cut down on his pop. He says, I'm down to like 1 a day. Then I show him this, and I say, yeah, me too.
it's the
What's the big deal?
it's the how much do you smoke? About a pack and a half, you pussy.
Right.
I go through 2 lighters a day, dude. Yeah.
Very nice. Do e-cigs require lighters?
No, not at all. Of course not. It's the E part of the cig, and that.
Oh, I see.
There's no smoke involved. It's just,
Really? Okay, so you
this
don't
little-
have to light them?
This little part is the lighter kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's
I
the
see.
engine which drives the mist.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Huh. Do you think the mist looks cool? Do you want to do a movie where there's noir? You want to do a movie with noirish components that has e-cig vapor?
No, you know what though? I will be fascinated because like I don't think because you know movie companies now have actual smoking departments. Like I met a woman her job was to actually go through movies and television shows and stuff like that and mark incidences of smoking and keep graphs, charts. I don't know what the outcome or what the studio was looking at for, something like that, but her
that's
gig was
great.
actually to examine the amount of smoking in movies and television, stuff like that, for a specific studio. I think it was Paramount. Yeah, which is just really weird. But I don't know if I've seen a movie yet that does like a vaporizing e-cig or anything like that.
That seems surprising. Well, you know, according to a recent survey by someone, you know, Hollywood's still, you know, racist by comparison to the demographics. So it'll probably take them a little while to get to the e-cig phenomena too. They're constantly behind the curve, according to what this survey said.
Yeah. I mean, you know, let's face it. They're trying to like work in Twitter. It's like it's very bizarre to see because technology is progressing so quickly.
Right.
How much they struggle, how much the system struggles to kind of keep up with it. And one of the things, especially, was like the cell phone thing was a real rough one for a while because it basically kind of killed horror films in an odd way because people carry around cell phones, right? And so there was always that scripting plot device of okay, there's no tower, there's the battery dies, there's no bars, whatever, right? And so yeah, so there was always that kind of thing that really kind of, you know, now it's like when in thrillers and stuff like that. There was that weird struggle for a while to how do we adapt to cell phone technology, and now a lot of it is how do they adapt to Twitter and Facebook and all this other stuff, and how do we throw social media into the mix, and if, you know, would somebody be using social media in this type of situation, and there's all kinds of weird kind of, you know, what's legit and what's not these days. But yeah, it's only a matter of time, I'm sure, before vaporizers become kind of
we will get to the point, especially, and I know you're one who watches a fair amount of old movies, where the smoking is so prevalent.
Oh
that,
yeah.
And it's just fantastic. And I've never smoked, but I find it a fascination nonetheless. But it's gotten to the point where you notice how much of it was in older films, and you just have people, smoking all the time. It was fantastic. And there was some scenes a friend of mine and I were watching in some film where they'd be smoking in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And how often that happened, and she came to the conclusion that, I don't understand how the entire society just didn't burn itself to death.
Yeah.
And it was, I guess, relatively rare, all things considered, although, certainly it happened on occasion. I think that's, for instance, how Jack Cassidy died.
Right, well, and, you have the famous Richard Pryor scenario as well.
Yeah.
I believe he was smoking, although I think he was smoking drugs in bed, but still.
Yes, there was a little bit more going on with that, yeah.
It's funny. It's like everybody kind of looks at Mad Men and they're like, my God, they do nothing but smoke and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that really was the shtick. I mean, it didn't matter up through the 80s. I mean, hell, even into the 80s. There must have been a time when it probably started slowing down.
I bet it's around. Politically, the first person I remember making a deal out of that was Hillary Clinton, or it was at least during the Clinton administration. So I'm guessing that if you wanted to look at a timeline, you're probably looking at early to mid-90s.
90s, yeah.
Where that's something that started to wane a little bit, and now it is at a point where it's almost dramatic when you see it in quantity. Not a little bit, but in quantity.
Yeah.
It's great also in sports, especially on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. In golf, you'd see Arnold Palmer golfing on the course, taking shots, smoking cigarettes the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Oh, see, and I was gonna say the drinking in public thing was really like Johnny Carson. Like they'd be fucking loaded and smoking cigarettes and stuff.
Obviously,
like that
Tom Schneider was probably the best example of that.
Yeah.
Schneider did 80% of his shows completely hammered.
Yep.
Which went a long way toward making him great. But yeah, those are great examples when you had it in the TV studio. But some of the sports stuff, if you watch from the 50s, 60s, 70s, you've got baseball managers and baseball players smoking in the dugout.
That's
you have, and you have Arnold Palmer, who, again, is a top 5 all-time golfer, going through 18 holes, just,
wow.
Football coaches on the sideline are smoking cigarettes. It's a nostalgic throwback, if nothing else, and now smoking is, probably rightfully so, gone out of favor, and as a result of that, it jumps out at you more than it did when you recognized it as just being a sign of the times.
Oh, completely. Yeah, actually, I've been rewatching the X-Files on Netflix, and it's fascinating what a big deal and how what's the word? How standoutish cigarette smoking / Cancer Man is whenever he shows up. It's like, and they always make a deal of his cigarette too. It's like there's always like somebody says, "Don't smoke in here," and he lights up anyways, or he like dramatically puts out the cigarette, or it's even like a cue for Mulder that he's been there. Like in the X-Files universe, there's only one person that smokes, and it's that dude. And I find that really kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't remember. I'm trying to think of when cigarette ads became illegal.
Oh, you're going back to the. It depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about television and radio, you're talking about electronic or billboards.
Well, like television ads went out, I think, before I was a kid. Yeah,
you're talking. You're 68, 69.
Yeah.
At the latest early 70s.
I was gonna say see, because I thought the Marlboro. I for some reason I feel like I still remember Marlboro Man ads.
I might be wrong, but it didn't. If I'm wrong by a few years, and we're maybe looking at a 77 or something like that, I'm almost positive didn't drift into the 80s.
Yeah, and then billboards. The billboards
sort of drifted away. Probably right.
Yeah, and those I feel like those went into the mid 80s at least, because there was I just remember lots of Joe Camel's. His nose looks like a cock going into a vagina.
I think much later than that too.
Yeah, probably so. And then alcohol billboards and ads I feel like were gone for a while, but then they crept back in.
But then they've come back of late, and harder alcohol has come back. Because you could always do the malt beverages, and so there was a little bit of a technicality. There was a loophole which allowed beer to, beer was obviously the main one within the malt beverage realm, but now it doesn't. I find myself surprised when there's a vodka ad on TV.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of, I know that's becoming the norm, but it's still kind of curious that's been lessened a little bit. That the restrictions on that have backed off to a large degree. Whereas,
yeah.
you know, smoking's just a horrible no-no, of course.
Yeah, I think.
How long before we get some sweet medical marijuana spots?
Really, yeah, that can't be too far behind us now. I don't think, or too far in front of us. I think. Anyways, let's. But yeah, smoking, movies, etc. So I watched. So we'll discuss kind of what we're going to do with a quasi format change, and I will be back. Theoretically, I may be back on Tuesdays in the very near future because of work schedule stuff, and we may kind of adapt this onto that. But what I'm thinking we should start doing is we'll pick out a movie, and then the next week. So tonight we'll say that we'll pick a movie that's going to be streaming, so all five of us, can watch it, and then the next week we will actually that will be the main focus of the show. We'll actually discuss and review that movie. And each week somebody different will choose what film we'll watch, and then and each week they'll kind of lead the critical discussion of it, I guess.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
All right.
Yeah, and that goes back to the kind of podcast that you and I and Tremendo kind of played with a little while back, and that never went anywhere because I never liked it. Not the
but you want to do it again.
I didn't
like it, but damn it, I want to do it again.
Yeah, it wasn't the format idea. There was something else about it that I didn't like. I could never kind of put my finger on it. I think it was just because it was about editing and figuring things out and adding
stuff. Your finger was probably a little bit too busy e-smoking.
Probably, yeah. Well, and also I think the deal is that I think it was just requiring too much work for me to edit and stuff, whereas now it's like we don't give a shit. It just goes out and it's there and deal with it.
Right.
Anyway, so I'll bring up the film that I want that would like us to watch for next week.
On Tuesday, by the way, Dub and I sat in and talked about a couple things. So I'll catch you up from a brief review standpoint. Talked a little bit about Major League and how a friend of mine watched it and didn't like it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that sort of fascinating that there was a sort of that it's a movie that's in high regard, but it very much is in its own time zone and has a lot of that 80s quality where you're into it or you aren't.
Sure.
And so got into a little bit of that conversation, talked quite a bit about sports movies as a whole, and Dub doesn't like the concept or doesn't like many sports movies, he argued, largely because when he watches a sporting event, he feels like it's clearly the sports aspect, the athleticism aspect of cinema takes him out of it. And so there's a predictability as well that removes him from the film as well. And I found that fascinating because I argued in turn that all movies have a predictability factor, that there's a formula that you go to and you generally know what you're going to get into. And then we talked a little bit about our essentials, and sadly I don't remember his because that would involve me paying a lot of attention. But sure. I picked Mr. Hulot's Holiday.
Oh, nice.
The Jacques Tati film, which has a lot of vaudevillian kind of silent film quality about it, and that was my recommendation as far as the Essentials was concerned.
Yeah, Hulot's Holiday is great. They're actually Criterion is putting out an essential Jacques Tati box set, I think in October, November, and it's got Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, Playtime, Traffic. And then I'm trying to remember what's the other one that's in there with Monsieur Hulot's Holiday.
That one and Playtime are the two that I'm immediately remembering, but I know there's another one in there.
Playtime's the big one. Playtime's amazing. Hulot's Holiday is fantastic because it's very kind of compact and
that's the one that I think I like a little bit better of the two.
Yeah.
But you're right. They're both. For what he did and the way he went about it, there's a really neat quality about how he was, the choreography.
Yeah,
He was able to, of how he pulled that off was really, I thought really well done.
Yeah,
and as a result, it's neat the Criterion's getting around to doing that.
Yeah,
I'm surprised it's taken this long.
Well, they've done them before. They've done them individually in the past, and
I thought they had.
Yeah, but they lost the rights to it. And now they're bringing them back, so it's the first time available on Blu-ray as like a giant single set.
Because not terribly long ago, I looked for them on Hulu, and they weren't there, and I didn't understand why. Because I thought there was a period of time where Criterion had released at least some of the Tati films, and now you're explaining why that was. Okay.
They actually had them all, I believe. And the worst part is I have to look up what the one that's missing is that we can't think of, because it's actually very good as well. And I feel horrible that I can't think of it. But yeah, Tati A was a great physical comedian without having to be like overblown in a weird way. I mean, he would create this brilliant kind of Mon Uncle. That's what it was.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's going to be Playtime Traffic,
that is
Mon Uncle.
A film.
Yeah, Monsieur Hulot's Holiday and Jour de Fête, I guess, or Jour de Fête is maybe how it's pronounced. But yeah, Playtime is still. They all have their different pluses and minuses, I guess. Well, minuses is a tough thing because I don't know if any of them really have minuses. Monsieur Hulot's Holiday is great because it's really tight and has these neat Rube Goldberg device things within them because you've got not only him but you've got all the other guests staying at the hotel with him, and so all of them with their personalities and stuff end up setting up these very bizarre little kind of ding 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 dinks, and you think something tragic is going to happen, and at the last second something spins it out of the way and it doesn't. But he was always also very obsessed with kind of technology, and as kind of moving from the old world into the new world was a big Tati kind of theme. And Monsieur Hulot is very much kind of a man of the past, a very much man out of time, I guess. But Playtime, he built like a giant city set for the whole thing because it was all about modernization and these giant glass steel buildings and all this other stuff. So he had this huge, I mean, apparently, I guess outside of Paris, wherever it was shot, he just had this huge, like basically this kind of city built. I mean, it was this whole deal for the production. And it's a gorgeous film, and his movies, Playtime especially, needs to be seen on the big screen. It's like if you watch it on television, you're like, yeah, okay, that was fine. And Playtime was the one that I watched it originally on video, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then it played in 70mm at the Egyptian, and I was like,
neat.
I'm going to go check it out. And a completely different movie because he does things in wide shots. You know, and so on a smaller screen, you're not really kind of catching all the interesting little subtleties that are taking place in these wide shots with all the different characters and all the little stuff that's taking place. And on a big screen, all of a sudden, all of these things become very apparent. And it's, you know, and there are a lot of filmmakers who, back before VHS, basically, everybody composed for a big screen. So when you move things to a small screen, you really start losing stuff.
Yeah, and a lot, I guess the most dramatic example is the pan and scan issue.
Oh, completely.
That would completely take you out of the film, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny.
Or played a major role in how a lot of that was framed and laid out.
Right. You know, I find it really interesting how it used to be cineasts, cinephiliacs, geeks, whatever the hell you want to call them, would complain about pan and scan, right? Because without the letterboxing. And now, because of 16:9 televisions, everybody's bitching about the tops and bottoms being cut off of movies.
Yes,
it's like you can't fucking win, no matter what. It's like it's not. There's always something missing. But yeah, and then the other kind of the transition that those interesting moments when you realize that movies deserve to be seen on the biggest screen possible was 40 Guns, the Sam Fuller film, was another one that I had seen maybe 2 or 3 times, and I liked it. I always liked it, but for some reason, when I saw it again at the Egyptian on the big screen, it had a completely different impact, and I don't know. There's just something about the big screen, it enveloping you, something about that, and the way those movies were composed to be witnessed on something that large, that you suddenly are introduced to something. It feels completely different and new to you when you actually finally get to see something on the big screen. So, fingers crossed that never goes away. We'll see.
A good 20 years ago, you and I watched Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah,
during a weekend Western film festival, classic Western film festival sort of thing at the local theater at the time, local theater being Tucson. And that's a movie that definitely jumps out at me and did at the time of the importance of being able to see a film in its actual aspect ratio.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and Leone, Leone composed he was of the, I wouldn't say he was the first generation, but he was definitely the generation that got, because, they had moved to the 2:3:5 aspect ratio, the widescreen aspect ratio in the 50s because of television. And Howard Hawks and a bunch of other people complained about it, and that they couldn't compose images that way. I think it was Hawks who said the only thing that you can shoot with a widescreen is is a snake. Something like that. It's good for like snakes and long lines or something. But Leone kind of found this amazing way of just using this to not just, and it wasn't just vistas, but how he composed shots with people in them, in the foreground, background, and on Once Upon a Time in the West, man, seeing that thing on the big screen, that's nuts. I mean, especially that opening.
Yes.
When you've got, that first 10 minutes or whatever, when they're waiting at the train station for Bronson's character to show up. You've got things taking place everywhere in that shot. I mean, foreground, middle ground, background, there's always, because you're dealing with 3 characters, there's almost always something going on somewhere. And without being able to see that, the impact has to be, you lose so much of that movie if you're not actually seeing it in its proper dimensions. I kind of thought of something that I wanted to bring up. I rewatched, and I can't say I believe I'm saying rewatch because I barely remember watching it the first time. Babylon A.D. Does that movie sound familiar to you at all?
Is that Nicolas Cage?
No, it's Vin Diesel.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So this is a Vin Diesel movie from 2008, and it's a sci-fi film, and it was
right.
And it's got Michelle Yeoh in it, and Charlotte Rampling, and Gerard Depardieu, and Mark Strong, and I forget who else. It's actually kind of got this really bizarre.
It's like one of those. It was one of those August or September or January throwaway releases, wasn't it?
Probably, yeah.
I think it was probably in cinemas for a week and probably in the cheaps for a week, and I probably caught it one night then. It's a movie I've seen and don't remember a frame of it.
Yeah, it tanked. It got 6% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's 1.5 times. That's what 50% better than I, Frankenstein.
Probably, yes, you're right. Yeah, it
up until the last time we looked, I haven't looked at I, Frankenstein for a while, so maybe I, Frankenstein has improved a little bit.
Actually,
so they might be on even par.
I think. Wait, I thought was I, Frankenstein 4 or 9?
I believe it was 4. Last report I had heard it was 4.
That was our math equation for I, Frankenstein. So
yeah, correct. Mm-hmm.
I hope so, because, and again, not having seen I, Frankenstein,
which is a travesty in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree.
No, you don't.
I don't. You're right. I don't agree. It's every so often there's something that I don't mind missing. Jesus Christ, really? Into the Storm? Must you take over every website for your shitty bullshit Twister?
Jean de Bont lives.
Yeah, really. Actually, yeah. Poor Jan de Bont wish he was. Yeah, okay. So I, Frankenstein is 4%. Thank God.
So Babylon AD.
Babylon AD. Not a good movie. I mean, it's a mess. It really is a mess. Also, I think it came out the same year, just after Children of Men. It kind of has the same angle, right? It's Vin Diesel has to get a young girl who's pregnant to America, and there's kind of things about science versus religion versus how do we raise our children, and it's kind of got all this. It's a mishmash of themes that never solidifies, and it's just kind of a train wreck. But it's not a horrible train wreck. Like I don't know if it was worth 6%. But
so it's more like is it more like an Unbreakable train wreck where you really actually don't see the train wreck?
Yes, yeah, it's already wrecked by the time you get there. And all you see is the aftermath. But and Bruce Willis going, "How did I live?" But anyways, it's a bad movie, but it's not horrendous. And I was like, and I don't know if it deserved the 6%. I mean, I don't know if I, Frankenstein deserves the 4%. That to me even seems like, and again, we're looking at this though as the algorithms for Rotten Tomatoes and all these things are horrible. To actually sit there and go, this movie only is worth 4%, this has a 4% value versus, whatever is atrocious to begin with.
And that's why we do it.
Exactly, yeah, that's the weird part, is it is. But one of the things that I kept thinking about was part of its failure due to the low status of Vin Diesel at the time. Like, if Babylon AD was released, within the past couple years, after his huge Fast Furious comeback, and Vin Diesel's kind of,
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think it would have made a difference. I don't think Vin Diesel carries any stroke at all, regardless of where he is in the Fast and Furious. That's his. That's the one that lucks out. I think he wanted pitch black. For instance, what was the other? Was it Riddick?
Riddick,
yeah, Riddick. Riddick's a horrible film. Nobody saw it.
Right.
Yeah. It's not Vin Diesel carries no impact whatsoever. He benefit. That's not a good or a bad thing. It's just he's like a lot of actors in that regard. You think they've got a little bit more weight than they do because they lucked into a franchise. It's the franchise that carries it more than it is his involvement in it. Now, does he help the franchise a little bit? Okay, maybe, but is that going to show any extraneous benefit outside of that little realm? I don't think so. And a movie like Babylon AD is probably going to be a throwaway in 2008, probably going to be a throwaway in 2014.
Sure, but
I'm glad you got to see it.
But Riddick, thanks, I appreciate that. But Riddick did claim 59%, right? So more critics appreciated it than appreciated Babylon AD.
Okay, now which one?
Hold on.
Okay.
Here's where I'm going with this: is that if an actor is down and out, and down and out being a relative term, right? But it's like Vin Diesel for a brief period of time was in high favor and high esteem in a weird way, not as a talent, but it's like they're like, oh, but he did the Iron Giant, he's in the Fast and the Furious thing, and it's like he's a box office moneymaker kind of character type of person, and then all of a sudden he had a bunch of just kept sinking, starting with Triple X, just kept sinking lower and lower. Chronicles of Riddick, people like instantly were getting sick of him, right, and saying Diesel, whatever, flash in the pan. Does that make people do you think critics then are willing to be harsher on a movie if they have kind of lost favor, if an specific actor has lost favor with audiences?
Absolutely.
So if Babylon AD were released today, it wouldn't be,
it might not have made any more money, but it wouldn't be 6%.
Sure.
It might be 38%.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's a fair assessment. There is very much, regardless of what entertainment realm you are in, there's a kick you when you're down media component, and as a result of that, you feel like you can take a little bit more license because you've gone through the process of building somebody up, and now you're watching the fall, and you take a little sense of glee in that, and in the process, maybe a sentence here and a sentence there. You're taking a shot a little bit more. Yeah, right. I can see that. I think that's a very reasonable assessment. In terms of how that quantifies at the box office, I would suggest it's minimal.
Right. Well, see, and I'm not worried about box office as much because I don't feel that. I mean, box office does not a good movie make, right?
No, but I use box office in this regard because I think Babylon AD was a throwaway movie in 2008 that they shoved in August and September or January.
Right.
And it would be a throwaway movie that they tossed into. I don't think Babylon AD is going to be a Liam Neeson type action niche genre film.
Sure.
I don't think they're going to feel ballsy enough to release a Babylon AD, as messed up as it is, in May because they think they can capitalize on his blockbuster appeal in the summer. I think they're still going to release it in August or September or January when it's a toss-out and hope for the best.
Right. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I know this is something I keep coming back to, and it's something I find very upsetting and weird about film criticism is that because of all these external factors, a film itself may not get a fair shake. And again, I'm not using Babylon AD as we must reevaluate this because it's really a masterpiece. I don't go, I just found it interesting because of who was involved in it. Because of Diesel's status at that time being a factor into why people it just didn't show up for it, but but as a critic whose job it is to give it's going to be a subjective view anyways, but at least a fair criticism to be able to look at a film and judge it as a film and not like the politics behind why it was made, or it's like people will say fuck a Roman Polanski movie because it's Roman Polanski.
Mm-hmm.
Right, or Woody Allen. It's like
You're letting their outside morality determine whether you think it's a good film or not.
Yeah, they're judging the artist, not the art.
Right.
And so a part of me almost wishes that there was a new group of film criticism that would become popular, which would be all about reevaluation of something, like, you know, a year after something came out or 2 years at, like there needs to be some like odd moratorium that takes place between your first review and then you need to go back and watch the film again, and to, you know, once kind of dust has settled and you're now kind of in a different state of mind, how you feel about something. Because I know a lot of critics, you know, that they will always say, hated that movie then, I'll never go back and see it again. But then, like, Ebert every so often would go back and rewatch a movie and go, you know what, I think I screwed up on that one. There's actually this here and that there.
Well, yeah, but here's the problem, okay? And it's on one. Sometimes your job becomes so. What's the word I'm looking for? It's so by the book. The fact that you do it constantly makes the process of going back and wanting to do it again more difficult.
Agreed.
So their job is, whether you like them or not, their job is to write, what, 100 film reviews a year?
Sure, at least,
Which means that of those, let's use that as a round number, of those 100 film reviews that they're writing a year, that means they have to watch 100 movies.
Right.
70 to 75 of them, at least, are going to be by the book, formulaic, nothing special, disposable entertainment.
Sure.
So in the process, most of your job is watching, it's not really good, it's not really bad, it's predictable, it's just going through the motion. There's nothing about it that stands out.
Sure.
Then you're lucky in the rest of it to either really despise something or really like something. And the mediocrity takes up so much of your time that it makes it difficult to have to go back and watch a movie that you might have misreviewed.
Right.
You know, because your responsibility is still reviewing it in the moment, and then going through the process of reviewing something else, and the next movie that comes out that week, and so forth. So I can understand the process behind it, and honestly, how difficult it would be, I think, if that's all you do is review movies, to go back and try to come up with a revisionist approach to it. You'd have to do this, I think, with, and Ebert did a good job of this, you'd have to do it with specific films.
Sure.
You'd have to have enough people out there convince you that maybe you missed the mark with, you know, your first review of Transformers.
Right.
Okay? And so, okay, I got enough complaints on that, and complaints, not just overwhelming social media bullshit complaints because the machine is out there and you somehow skewered their, you know, their cinematic sacred cow.
Sure.
You know, and there's some sort of campaign that made it a big deal. You know, go protest this movie critic because he said this, blah blah blah. And maybe he or she will review it again. But people that you respect, who saw it as well and saw it differently than you did, and then you can go, and maybe those are the ones that are worth going back. And that might be 6 a year.
Right.
You know, maybe there are 6 movies from 2011 that weren't reviewed particularly well, but enough people said, I didn't think that was so bad, that maybe you'd feel it was worth to go back at that. And then perhaps something like that on a limited basis could conceivably.
That would be fun. I would love a site that did that. Like at the end, like every, you know, every. I mean, you could, I mean, you have to do more than just update it at the end of every year, but find a way to, it's like, you find a critic who's willing to go back 1 year at stuff that they witnessed then, had heard different points of view of, and may have, you know, and may be like, okay, maybe I was kind of a little bit wrong on that one. Let me go and rewatch it. Because, you know, this weird film criticism is infallible mentality that they have about a lot of stuff, I think just kind of bugs me. And I don't know, maybe I worry that we're losing. Maybe I'm worried that we're losing good movies more now than we used to, which is bullshit because it's always been that way. I mean, we've lost God knows how many movies have kind of disappeared right through the cracks over the ages. I mean, there are, every so often I'll hear about some actor and you're like, who the hell's this guy? And then you look up their library and there's, from 1940 to 1975, they were in all these movies, none of which you ever saw because they all just kind of slipped away and nobody ever paid attention to them. And maybe that's just one of those things that I worry about now, is that we're taking time exposing films like or reviewing films like Transformers when it doesn't matter what you're going to say about Transformers. It doesn't matter that you're gonna like it or hate it, because it's gonna make its money no matter what. It's gonna do. You can't. That's not the films you should be. Those aren't the movies you should be watching or worrying about. It would be nice to have a site that's like, we don't need to review these giant tentpole blockbusters because you're going to go and see it whether we like it or not. You're going to go see Guardians of the Galaxy. You're going to go see, and and I'm not saying all of these are bad, but you're going to go see Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. You're going to go see Godzilla. You're going to see the giant films that they have spent $200 million advertising. But you may not be seeing like all these movies that are now kind of slipping onto VOD, which is nice. They're at least being given some kind of life there. But at the same time, they're also getting, they are depending on word of mouth. These things that are specifically working, depending on word of mouth. And something Ebert and Siskel and Ebert both did. It was like Hoop Dreams, of course, being a great example, or Thin Blue Line being another example of movies that they really kind of stood up and triumphed and said, people need to see this film. And that continually kept things going in the public conscious, and people started requesting that, seeing that film, and they would get distribution deals that way. I feel like Memento, actually, I think was one of those that a few people saw and started championing, and Steven Soderbergh himself kind of witnessed it, and he's like, okay, more people need to watch this movie, and that was, those are the things that starts getting.
Well, okay, let me ask you this: how many film critics have that kind of stroke? Or is it something that requires people within the industry to try to stand up for a film that they feel perhaps got overlooked?
Right, and it's true. It's very rarely catches on, especially now when film criticism is incredibly splintered, because you've got online people. Nobody reads the paper reviews anymore. All they do is they look at a number on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's kind of the deciding factor. But you're right. There's no real way. I think it's incredibly hard for any critic nowadays to be able to champion something and actually see more people watch it and hope that it gets out there. Siskel and Ebert had the most powerful medium of the time, television, back when all there was print and TV, right? So they existed during a very fortunate time in media when it was much easier to get word out and start pressing these kind of things. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's again, I always keep coming back to this about modern day film criticism, and kind of there's something always feels off about it to me, and I can never really put my finger on it, which is a bummer. There is no solution for any of it. It's just they're going, the stuff needs to be churned out, the stuff needs to be reviewed. There's always a ton of movies out there, foreign, domestic, small, big. And the only ones that ever really, see the press or big light of day are the films that are much like any politician. He who has the biggest wallet gets, wins.
Right.
That's the guy that gets out there and gets noticed, unless you say something crazy and outrageous. But anyways, I find. I don't know. I'm always fascinated by, and again, I'm not saying I'm innocent of any of this. I will watch a movie, and if I'm not, in favor of whoever's in it, I will definitely be harsher on it than I am.
Okay, has there been a movie off the top of your head that you think, man, I should watch that again from a couple years ago, and maybe I'll come away with a different opinion?
Oh, I do that all the time, unfortunately. I think, and it's one of those things where it's like, if
how often off the top of your head do you think you come through with a different opinion than what you had the first time through you watched it?
I don't know if my opinion will change on something as much as I will alter things. Like, I will probably I don't want to say I will like everything better the second time, but I will at least find more things to appreciate a little bit more the second time. And I don't know if it's because, look, I'm sitting down to watch this again, I'm going to pull something good out of this. But, sometimes, like I said, I think like a bad mood or whatever else, I will never sit down and rewatch, Transformers 4 again. But I did rewatch Transformers 2 after not liking it in the theater, and I didn't come away with anything new on that one. So there are movies that's definitely I'll always stick to, but, there will be sometimes like maybe even just small performance bits, something just some. I'm one of those people that wants to find a spark in there somewhere, because no movie sucks 100%. No movie's great 100%. You know, no movie's perfect. No movie's a zero. And it's all about finding those little bits and pieces here and there.
Is there anything you've seen a second time off the top of your head that you had a dramatically different opinion about?
Yeah, you know what? Well, we talked about that one time. Snake Eyes, which I do believe, and actually, and I think it's actually a lot of De Palma movies, like later De Palma films, because I was a big fan of early De Palma. But like after, but it's like he did like Snake Eyes, Raising Cain. I feel like there was another one in there. Femme Fatale, I actually remember liking the first time. But right. Snake Eyes and Raising Cain were two. Raising Cain especially was one that I did not like at all the first time I saw it. And then several years later, I ended up watching it on Laserdisc or something, and whatever it was doing kind of started sinking in more. And I really like that movie now. I think Raising Cain is actually it's funny because it's like I don't think it was ever released on DVD. And that's one of his that has kind of really kind of gone the way of the dodo, which is weird because I mean I don't know why. I mean Snake Eyes, which I do like, is not as good as Raising Cain to me, but somehow it's got the Blu-ray release, and Raising Cain maybe because it's, you know, John Lithgow versus Stephen King, Nicolas Cage. That's a weird Freudian slip. I wonder what that's about. Anyways, but that
as Stephen King
yeah,
in a John Lithgow production.
I'd watch the fuck out of that movie. But yeah, maybe it's the people look at something and go, if you got Nicolas Cage on the cover, you're going to get people to buy it, versus John Lithgow, people be like, the third rock from the sun dude, and what's that about? But yeah, so I mean, there have definitely been movies that I have gone back and rewatched and said, oh shit, and that probably happens with me 10%, 15% of the time, maybe. I mean, I'd say a good 60 to 70% of the time, I'll come back going, okay, well, this part wasn't that bad, and that part wasn't that horrible. And it's gone the complete opposite. Like films that I've loved the first time, the second time I'll go back and rewatch and go, no, that's just that. I don't know, you know, that was an in the moment thing. You know, it was kind of I didn't expect it to like. I'm trying to think of something where it's like my expectations were so low when I went and finally saw it, I'd be like, oh, okay, that was actually pretty entertaining, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll rewatch it again and go, oh my God, this is not good on its own terms, you know? And there is that expectation game that's always played. Let's go back a second to your sports thing. I think that was interesting that you and Aaron were talking about. Do you think that the sports films, because you were talking about the predictability in any movies, but do you think because of the concept of what a sport does and how sports films operate, they become more predictable? It's like sports movies are emphasize the structure of the movie versus something else. Does that make sense?
Sure. They emphasize the deal of a sports movie going in is that you're more than likely in a position where things aren't going well, but you're going to overcome your issues and win at the end.
And you see,
I mean that it is the classic. Yeah, sports movies are made for we're small, we're up and coming, we're plucky, we're the underdog. It is the very definition of the underdog story.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Yeah, I mean, naturally, they're made within that realm. You go in knowing that that's going to be the story and hoping to get sucked up into it, and hopefully it delivers. But I don't think from a format standpoint or a predictability standpoint that even the by-the-book sports movie is any different than the by-the-book romantic comedy or the by-the-book action film or any of that sort of thing. And so that was what I found. That doesn't bother me. I don't go into a sports film bothered that I know what the gist of the foundation and format's going to be.
Sure, no, I agree. I think there is no difference in the predictability of them. I think for some reason those sports films show the seams a lot easier. Like it becomes much more of the format and the structure becomes much more apparent with a sports film than. I I mean, a romantic comedy, I would say, is probably a close second. I mean, unfortunately, romantic comedy has really become...
I think, I think an action film certainly falls under that category. When you get there are certain things about, but I understand what you mean.
But an action film is about how you get there, whereas a sports film, there's only one way. You know what I mean? It's like they've got to lose so they can figure out how to climb back up again, and where's that special thing that's going? You know what I'm saying? It's like within sports and the rules of sports, there are only specific things that can take place that will allow you to then climb back to the top. Versus like an action film where you can have a variety of different things bring you down, and that one thing, that twist or whatever that clicks, that kicks you back into the third act so you can climb out of it. The way information, I guess, is delivered in any other type of film can be altered in various different ways, whereas with sports films, there's only kind of a specific... And not all sports films, because I think
there are certain specific you have to play with, because sports are movies, because sports is something that is based on rules and structure. You have to stick within the rules and structure of the movie.
So you have not only the rule, and you have to take those rules and structure, apply them to another thing that have rules and structure,
right?
And then you become a very kind of tight, simple device, basic device.
Yeah.
And you've got those things that find ways, and I guess the way to alter them definitely is thematically. I think Rocky, of course, being a great way of using that exact same rule and structure, but making the goal completely different than it's about winning. What's about Rocky are the themes of going the distance, and that's really what it's about. Versus and Rocky, before anything else, even though it's a boxing movie, there's very little boxing that takes place, and it's more or less a love story. But it really is about kind of finding yourself and becoming the best person you can be, versus you got to fly now, versus it being about we can come back and win this game. And I love Major League, but I rewatched Major League, I think a while ago when we discussed this, but it really is a by the numbers. We're a scrawny team, they start to work together, they're getting better, somebody's going to bring them down. Okay, guys, we got to really pull our shit together now and win. Moneyball was a very different type of sports movie.
Moneyball, to me, I thought Moneyball was too documentary-ish to me.
Interesting.
And so I wasn't terribly. I didn't think it was a great film. I thought it was almost, and this is sometimes sports falls into this category, and really this is what the movie was about. The whole movie is about thinking about a new way to try to be competitive in an environment that isn't competitive, but the way to do that is to break down stats and use math a lot. So the fact that it was a statistic kind of formulaic, not formulaic, but it felt sterile.
Right.
I guess.
Right. Yeah. Well, because Moneyball isn't about the big home run at the end that's going to win you the game, or anything like that, or the fake out like with Major League. It's the fake bunt.
But oddly, about that one to me, well, you're right. Moneyball had a very different feel, but it didn't even really feel like it was about any character to me. It was sort of like a fictionalized, editorial license actuality version of something that actually happened.
Right.
So the focus of it, and this is a very generational thing in sports. Okay, there are guys from my generation who view the importance of being able to make a big hit at a specific time very important. Those are the people we call clutch.
Okay.
The Billy Bean is the Brad Pitt character in Moneyball. He came up with or was on the front line of a concept called sabermetrics. Sabermetrics is a very statistics-based approach toward sports, and it takes the human element out of the equation completely.
Right.
Okay. The irony to this is that through what it allowed the Oakland A's to do, and I apologize for this because a lot of this is outside the movie, but it's kind of where I think a lot of the movie is also disingenuous, and part of the reason that I have issues with it. Sabermetrics in a baseball structure only gets you so far because the teams that have more money can adopt the system as well and still pay other guys more. Okay? And they're still going to win. So the Oakland A's, who are viewed in this story as a heroic example of statistical pioneering.
Right.
All they constantly do is get to the playoffs, okay?
Right.
And then a better team comes along and beats them.
Right.
Oakland has not won a World Series since this was implemented. They're very good. They're a very good franchise, probably better than they're supposed to be based on the money they have available because of this. Those are excellent accomplishments. They have won exactly 0 World Series.
Right.
During this whole, and so I'm watching this, and it's like some sort of heroic approach toward, and it's like, not really.
No,
like,
their benefit was they thought of it first.
Yeah, and then, but it's been adapted by everybody else, and Oakland for the longest time didn't realize the importance of having big players.
Right.
And so there's this statistical mentality that argues that that isn't important.
Right.
And it takes the humanitarian aspect, the humanity out of the sport.
Right.
But the reality is that people still react differently in big moment situations, and the statistics aren't capable of breaking that down, or you're not willing to look at that.
Interesting.
And so there's a clinical separation between those two mentalities.
Right.
Being able to blend those two mentalities provides you with a good franchise. Now here's the irony. Oakland, because that approach has not worked, Oakland this year has decided, screw it, we're spending money, we're renting players, we're getting really good guys, we're going to try to go the distance. They have bankrolled everything this year to try to win a World Series. They're the best team in baseball. Okay, record-wise, they are the best team in baseball. But last week, they went and got a big-time pitcher for Boston that they can pay for a little. They can pay for a portion of the year. They know he's going to go free agent, and he's not going to be. Oakland's not going to be able to afford him. So what Oakland has done is basically said, we're spending the ranch right now for a player who will be with us for 2 months, and we hope to God we win the World Series as a result of it. But if we don't, we're going to have to start all over again, and implement this theory again. So they're tweaking their own theory, and they're spending a lot more money doing it because they recognize that their sabermetrics model, as it was, the Moneyball model that has been so revered and revered by these statistical people, doesn't work. And it's not that it doesn't work, but it doesn't get you to the promised land.
It works as long as nobody else is doing it.
Right. It works as long as nobody else is doing it, which is just a fallacy because everybody's doing it to some degree. But also the importance of it is, again, understanding the way to blend the two.
Right.
That there's that there's a human unpredictability that goes with the numbers, and you're trying to balance it out. And baseball is so dull generally that they have to make up statistics. Right. No sport makes up more statistics than baseball. Baseball is stats heavy, and there are a lot of sabermetrics-based statistics that have worked their way into the baseball lexicon. And some old style, and a lot of them are entertaining too, because there are a lot of specific things that the 20-something stats guys will argue are really insightful and groundbreaking, and people who've been watching baseball for 50 years are saying, yeah, of course you do that. We had scouts who looked for that. We just didn't give it some sort of formula. Right. We just told the manager, that guy swings at a lot more strikes than the other guy does. Maybe you want him because he's a more disciplined batter. That was it. You know, but now it has also some sort of formula to it. So my long-winded blatherfest here is that I found Moneyball to be, while it's different in its structure, also very disingenuous and very sterile. And so I came out of it not really ever feeling like I had any connection to anything I was watching. Right. It was like I was watching a math problem instead of being the least bit interested that Brad Pitt was down on his luck, almost out of a job, and had to reinvent something, which is what the sports movie to a large degree is supposed to do for me. I'm supposed to get behind the hero, and I'm supposed to be interested and excited about them learning a lesson in the process that allows them to overcome whatever it is that whatever their demon was before. And to me, Moneyball never really had that. And so I always felt disconnected from it.
Right. Yeah, it's fair. So the other one I wanted to bring up other than Moneyball is Any Given Sunday. which
Okay.
was the Oliver Stone football movie, which uses the same thing of we're down, we're losing, we've got to win, and in the end, I believe they even do win the game. I think they even like they win the, I forget if it's playoffs or Super Bowl or whatever it is they're supposed to be winning. But the bigger thing and bigger ideas behind that movie is about the corporatization and the business of it versus the we're a team that's down and out, we've got to band together and pull this one out. I don't know where I was going.
Well, I think while you think of it, I think the problem I had with Any Given Sunday, a couple things. Typical Oliver Stone ridiculous editing, which you love, or which you love or hate.
Sure.
You know, and sometimes it's effective, and sometimes it's just ludicrous. In this movie, I felt like it was ludicrous. And then his classic sledgehammering of themes, and this one was the sports is the analogy for war or the analogy for battle. They're warriors, they're gladiators, all of that stuff that was just tired. And and Oliver Stone does this remarkable job of thinking he's the smartest guy in the room and never telling you anything more than what is already obvious.
Right.
Has been obvious from the first frame. But he does it in such a sledgehammer way that he truly believes in his head that his movie is showing you an epiphany that you never thought of before.
Right.
I kind of came out of that. Those were the two more or less negative aspects I had of On Any Given Sunday. But the prevailing theme about a corporatization approach, I think, is very important in the way sports is laid out. And it does take away. There's a lot of feeling in the sports world, at least, that the corporate mentality has taken the nostalgia away from it.
Right.
And a lot of modern, social media has a lot to do with this as well. The press has a lot to do with this. We know largely everything there is about an athlete. 60, 70, 40, 50 years ago, it was they were a lot more mythological.
Sure.
They were mythical creatures, and we didn't know their human fallacies as much, and we kind of liked that.
Right.
Now that doesn't exist anymore, and it kind of takes away. But there's still a ridiculous loyalty in sports.
Are there any more heroes in sports? I mean, is that something that has kind of disappeared in an odd way? I mean, I remember there was that odd time where Mark McGuire. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Before they discovered the steroids thing.
Right.
Because it was like they had the whole single dad story, and he was like on The View. I remember him being like everywhere, as kind of becoming like he had become to some extent a man to admire, very much in the Lance Armstrong kind of mold at the time, right?
Right.
Before, of course, those scandals, fall that make them falter. But yeah, so, I mean, does anybody look at sports the same way anymore? Are there heroes anymore in sports, or is that even possible?
Yes, and part of this has a lot more to do with. And this is a discussion that, and it ties into a lot of what you said at the top about the artist and the art. Sports is the same way. It's artist and art.
Right.
But there are definitely there's still such a loyalty among the team that you follow that you are often willing to look the other way or ignore the warts of the players who are on your team. The second that they leave your team, you're about the logo more than you are about the individual. So they are heroes as long as they're on your team.
Right.
Peyton Manning is probably in football the best example of quote-unquote hero right now. Viewed as a good guy, generally speaking. His marketing is excellent because he's self-effacing all the time.
Right.
You hear some things quietly in the background about how he's very charitable and that sort of thing, and generally whatever scandals there may or may not have been have been very limited. And the biggest knock on him is that he can't win in the playoffs. That's an important knock.
Right.
But generally speaking, he is viewed in very positive terms, and the sports loyalty that goes into that, I think, has a lot to do with that. Sports is also excellent because and I think they're the best of it, maybe even more than Hollywood stars, but that's certainly up for debate.
Well, I don't think the Hollywood star exists much anymore. I don't think
maybe
anybody's I don't think anybody's bankable.
Sports PR is excellent.
Yes.
And they're very good at marketing in a way that may be entirely different from what the person actually is. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James,
right.
Lance Armstrong,
right.
Mark McGuire. But what happens is that when the fall happens, it's dramatic. And then all of the stuff that was buried, LeBron James is a great example of. Before LeBron James decided he was going to leave Cleveland and go to Miami, and he did it in a very poorly constructed way, an event called The Decision, okay?
Right.
Hugely controversial. More controversial than it should have been. Admittedly, I didn't like it either.
Sure.
But after that happened, I think what was interesting is that not only did a lot of the public turn on LeBron James, but a lot of the media did as well. And the media never wrote a bad thing about him until after The Decision. And then they wrote story after story after story after story after story after story of story about what a diva he was, and about how hard he was to work with, and how difficult he was behind the scenes, and how demanding he was, and all that stuff. This was never mentioned before that. Right. So we have a loyalty. There's still a mythos to sports that falls under this equation that allows for that hero concept, even in social media, the way that it is, the hero concept still lives to a much lesser degree than it did, but it's still very much there in the sports world.
So
Tiger Woods.
Right. Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, you're right. Tiger Woods was definitely one of those people that everybody admired for a very long time. But the LeBron James thing, really quick. So LeBron James, The Decision, we can equate to Vin Diesel's Babylon AD.
I think at least it deserved 6% positive ratings. Yes.
And LeBron's return, LeBron went back, right? Wasn't that one of the big deals now?
Yes, that is correct.
Is him returning to the Fast and Furious franchise?
I believe that is correct. I believe that's accurate.
So this is how we tie this all together.
So I think what's ultimately going to happen is that Vin Diesel is going to play LeBron James in the biopic.
Wow. That would be the weirdest casting decision ever.
And it will be, well, you know, if you've got a sort of burly guy who's about 5'6", that would be the perfect guy to play a 6'8" basketball superstar.
Yeah, the oddest casting. I would love bizarre casting choices. We need to do that sometime. Who is the weirdest person that you could cast in this role? But some agent's like, yeah, but he's made his money on 6 films, so let's use him.
If they call it the Fast and the James, I think you'd be in good shape.
Right. Yeah. It's lordy, it's a weird one. Anyways, I don't know. So I guess we can kind of wrap this up.
All right.
So next Friday, we're going to try this, I think. I would like us to watch a film, and we're going to review it. We'll see if we actually pull this off. We may not even be here next week. We'll find out. And I mentioned this movie to you, and you haven't seen it in forever, but it popped up again, and I started watching it, and I was kind of fascinated by it. I believe it's 1981, The Dogs of War, which is a Christopher Walken film that was directed by John Irvin, something like that is the guy's name. Although that's the dude that wrote World of Garp.
Do you want me to cheat and look?
Yeah, go ahead, cheat and look.
All right, I'll cheat and look.
It's based off a Frederick Forsyth book. Christopher Walken plays and it's before Christopher Walken became crazy Christopher Walken, or the Christopher Walken caricature that we now know of today. Let
me see off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Oh man, doesn't it also have isn't Tom Berenger in that film? And I think it's directed by John Irvin.
That's
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Tom Berenger.
That's right. It took me a while to come up with that.
Yeah, and I don't know the actor's name, but the guy that played Belloc in Raiders of the Lost Ark is also in it. So yeah, and it's about it's a realistic take, I guess, on mercenaries and how their world works. I remember seeing it a few years ago with Tremendo. Actually, we rewatched it. He had never seen it, and I remember liking it quite a bit. But I don't know. Again, like anything else, was it just the time? Was the atmosphere? Was the mood? Or that I was into whatever the deal is? And I know you haven't seen it in decades.
Right.
Tremendo hasn't probably watched it in a while. I'm willing to bet Aaron and Warren have not seen it. So I figure, and it's now streaming on Netflix.
Okay.
So I figured what we should do is all of us will watch that by next Friday, and it will we will review it next week and kind of see where it stands, how people feel about it. has the filmmaking process evolved too much since then for it to be a film that's actually worthwhile anymore? I guess I don't know why. It'll be an interesting film to kind of look at and discuss, because I don't want to say it's an action film, but it's kind of an action film. And I think it has some of the I don't want to say the tropes of the action film at that time, but some of the limitations of the way you had to shoot action back then.
Does it have any of the tropes of a sports movie?
I don't believe so. No, it might. I mean, it is a team of mercenaries, so they could very well. And also, I think it's that's interesting. And I think next week is when the Expendables 3 comes out, so we'll find a way to tie it into the Expendables movie somehow. Even though I think that's just going to tank, especially now that it's leaked online and there's that whole deal. So I guess Shu, where can people find you?
Oh, I guess you could find me at Shuniverse. That would be SCHU-niverse.
Right. That's clever.
That'll probably work.
That's clever. And of course, you can find me at John Santo.
Hey, that's clever.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Where I will continually get favorited and retweeted as long as I show off my posters from Shout Factory. So that's exciting. So Shu, go ahead and play us out on the theme.
Oh, sweet.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. All right, folks, we'll see you next week where we'll be reviewing The Dogs of War.